everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight we're going to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that's plaguing us all across the country, and that is affordable housing. Affordable housing. I have two women that I'm going to speak to this evening on this very important topic that is impacting, like I said, our entire country. I live in an area that's very popular, known as the Triangle of North Carolina. And big tech has moved in here. Google is here, Facebook, Meta is here, and Apple is well on its way to build its 200 plus acre campus, the first of its kind on the East Coast, very, very soon. And it will be specifically housed here in the Triangle region of North Carolina. So, with that said, affordable housing really has become an issue. Everybody coming to the area will not be making those six-figure incomes that the average Apple employee will be earning. I think I read somewhere where they might be earning somewhere of maybe 150 on average, 150,000 a year. I might be up a little bit, I don't know, but that's a very nice salary. And so many of our essential workers will not be making that type of money. You know, people like our teachers, our sanitation workers, our social workers, our firefighters, etc. So my guests will talk about their triumph over land rights, equity, and affordable housing. And Leslie, one of my guests, Leslie St. Dre, will offer our local politicians and those dealing with this issue all across the country who care to listen, and I hope they are listening this evening, some sage advice and knowledge about this very, very important topic. So without further ado, I am going to first introduce you to Sheba Everett. She is an educator working as a parent engagement and equity director at Branches Community School in Durham, North Carolina. Sheba is now a bona fide housing justice advocate through the fight to save her and her neighbors' homes. She is a native of Durham's Old East Side neighborhood. She is a divorced mother to 5 beautiful daughters, where she resides in northern Durham, where she's been fighting alongside other Eno River Tenants Association families to stop evictions from the Eno River Association. This campaign is one of few in the state of North Carolina and perhaps the entire country where tenants have won the cancellation, listen guys, the cancellation of rent, receive the full the full habitability repairs to the homes that they're living in, and are on their way to winning the keys as homeowners under the shared equity land trust housing model. Welcome, Sheba, to the show.
You can, yeah. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Next, I have Leslie St. Dre. Leslie's former name was formerly Dreyer, but she goes by Leslie St. Dre now. Leslie is an organizer and educator dedicated to, I quote, building joyfully militant and intersectional movements of land and housing justice, end of quote. Leslie has been collaborating with unhoused and housed tenants for the past decade in the Bay Area of I got Caroline on the brain, in the Bay Area of California. She Leslie has built these campaigns that resist displacement and powerfully communicate that safe, dignified housing for all is possible. Several of Leslie's creative campaigns have been pivotal in shaping the narrative around big tech fueled displacement and homelessness. Leslie and her family moved to Durham, North Carolina in 2020, what a year, after being displaced, which was a blessing to the tenants renting in the Eno River area that were being evicted. Leslie and her partner work proved invaluable to their neighbors. And Leslie, I got to say this first. First, welcome to the show. But I see you, I'm going to give you a big bear hug because reading what you've done and all of that, listen, to me, I call that God's work because you injected yourself into a situation that really didn't quote unquote impact you. But I believe that when people, what impacts others impacts all of us, really, right? And they were your neighbors, even though you weren't living um, in their, river association housing or whatever. You still did that. You stepped in. And I think that is phenomenal. Chef's kiss to you. Thank you. Had to say that up front. All right. So Sheba, I'm going to start with you. Wow, people in the chat are already clapping. Look at that. All right. Edith, Loretta. Awesome, Sheba. Let's see. Wow. Okay. All right. You guys are great. All right. So Sheba, I'm going to start with you. Okay. So you found yourself escaping an abusive marriage with 5 beautiful daughters. I've got 3. I can't imagine 5, girl. Tell us how you found your home off of the Eno River area and where were you living prior to that space? Go ahead. Sheba? Uh-oh. Is she frozen? Sheba? Oh no. She's frozen. Oh gosh. Okay, Sheba, you're frozen now?
Are you back?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay, I don't know. You froze for a minute there. Did you hear the question?
Well, it's fruit.
Oh, keep going. Are you there?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. I was asking you.
Get to hear the question.
Okay, I asked you. You found yourself escaping an abusive marriage with 5 beautiful daughters. Tell us how you actually found your housing in that River area, and where were you living prior to that?
Prior I was living, I don't know, it's considered Southwest Durham over Cornwallis Road, in a tiny apartment. Me and my daughters were sharing one room, and that's really all I could afford because, like, I left my marriage pretty quickly. And so I just got on the internet after I got like all of my stuff together. I got on the internet and just started looking for places. And I went to visit, to try to secure many different houses. But they just didn't fit my needs. I have 5 daughters. And so being able to afford it and being able to fit in it, those 2 things don't always go hand in hand. But when I came across this house, it was online. I found it on one of those websites. And I drove down this street. And when I saw it, I was like, this is the one. It's the one. When you're driving down to see it, there's a garden in the back. And I was like, as soon as I saw the garden, I saw that it was big enough to fit all of us very comfortably. And I already knew the price of it. I was like, yeah, this is going to be the one that I can afford, fit in, and live comfortably.
Okay. So is it fair to say, so when you signed your lease and you thought you'd be able to stay there for however long you wanted to be there, correct? Sheba, did you, when
Yeah,
you
it
signed
was.
the lease,
Yes.
you thought, okay, okay, you'd be able to stay there as long as you, so is it fair to say that you were blindsided by the eviction notice?
Blindsided, yes, blindsided. It was such a shock that
Uh-huh.
like my stomach immediately went to my feet because I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. Because it
Mm-hmm.
was one of the questions that I asked prior to getting the house. Am I going, like, can I stay there, rent for as long as I needed to? And is there an option to buy? And I
Mm-hmm.
was very particular about asking these questions, specific about asking these questions,
Yes.
because I wanted some type of security. I know, like, being a renter, um, it's not much security. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted some type of security prior to getting the house.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So, what did you feel? The story is told that you received a letter on your door, taped to your door, and it was from Leslie and her partner saying that they were offering assistance and support because somehow, and we'll get into it with Leslie soon, somehow they had heard that you guys in the area were being evicted, had received eviction notices. What was that like when you received that letter taped to your door?
It was God answering the question that I had asked the night before. It was God answering the prayers that
Mm-hmm.
I prayed.
Mm-hmm.
Because right before I got that letter, I had a long one-on-one with God, because that was all that was all I had at the time. Like, I knew this was a fight that I definitely couldn't do alone, and I don't fight any fights without God, let's just say that. But I knew this was one that I could not fight alone, but I really didn't foresee, like, help, because I know I'm a renter and this isn't technically my house. So,
Mm-hmm.
how that story typically goes. So
Yes.
when I saw that note taped, I was like, God, you are answering my prayers. You are
Mm-hmm.
answering my prayers.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. So, Leslie, please tell us how you got involved with Sheba and the other tenants facing eviction from the Eno River Association. Give us some background of the whole story, Leslie, please.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we walk in that we're a few blocks away, so we walk in that forest every week. And one of the neighbors who we knew, they were actually the first ones we met in the neighborhood, had told us that they had all received eviction notices. So, and they had also thought they could stay forever. The tenants thought it was permanent
Mm-hmm.
housing, even though they were rentals. So yeah, so my partner came home and told me, and then we sort of split up and knocked the doors to all the houses. And most people, we did ask, do you want to stay? How long have you been here? Do you have other options? And everyone definitely wanted to stay. I would say most everyone didn't have another option to stay in the city at all,
Right.
given the inflated home values right now. So once everyone was united that they wanted to stay and fight, and some took a little more convincing than others,
Right.
because people know there's very few tenant rights after your lease is up,
Mm-hmm. Right.
which means people are at risk of displacement every year.
And one thing that I learned about Durham is that uh, we have in Durham, and it's not something that is often done in other places, that rent month to month type of renting situation, which means it could be pretty precarious, if you find yourself in that circumstance, because the landlord could say, oops, sorry, and it's one and done and you're gone. So was there any point, Leslie, in this fight, what was your process of getting this whole movement going? Because I know I read in the article for Sheba, she started thinking of, I got to raise money. I got to, you're kind of like a little scattered to just think of what can I do? Because it's like we said, rents are not affordable. Affordable housing does not exist here at all. So what was your process in the organizing of what to do? Because it is rare to have somebody your skill set to do something like this. I mean, it was a miracle.
To be honest, Sheba's GoFundMe I think it was to raise money to help you move. Am I correct, Sheba?
Yeah, it was to raise money to help me move. Yeah. And kind of also too, this like to get the word out.
So that GoFundMe, because Sheba is beloved in the community, it definitely, that's what launched people knowing about it. And people had already started calling in to tell them to not displace her. So that was that was the public's first understanding of it. And then after our first meeting with all the tenants and another tenant's backyard, we did decide to give them one more chance before going public with the petition to do the right thing and keep people there. And they said they were glad to offer it, glad to give away these houses to forest cops, forest rangers, they're police officers, for free off the tenants' backs. So
that was the original agreement that they had, right? That was the original agreement.
That is their story, is that, they bought some of the houses. 3 of them were given for free, willed to the land org. So, and then they bought others for very cheap. And they said it was always the intention to turn the homes over to the state. They do buy up land around the Eno to preserve the land, and they sell it for market rate to the state. That's part of their model. This is their only land that had tenants on it. So yeah, who knows? It's for a 40-year-old agreement. Nothing was written. Many, if not most, of the board members had no idea about it. They didn't even know about the evictions, which the board is actually legally supposed to be the ones making these decisions, not the ED in the state or whoever really was doing it. So yeah. Where was I? Sorry, I lost track there.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so Sheba sounded the alarm with her GoFundMe, and then when they said no, we're going to kick them out anyway, we released the petition, and it got a lot of attention very quickly. And at the same time, we were organizing to disrupt their annual meeting, show up to their annual meeting, which, all their main funders, a lot of their main volunteers, they are an org that relies on volunteers and local donors to do their work. And they have a land acknowledgement as part of their, mission, is, that we were holding them to that land acknowledgement that said they know the history of dispossession of people of color and the way property is used, that continues to dispossess people. And so we said, well, then don't do that. If you can preserve land, you can preserve housing, which they didn't. Some of the houses were in definitely slum conditions, roofs caving in with mold, things that people would never assume that would do, because they are well known.
Right. They are very well known. So with that, situation, which leads me to this whole thing where, okay, it was owned by the Eno River Land Association, of which they subcontracted a property management company to take care of these homes. But why weren't the homes being taken care of? As part of any renter's agreement, the landlord has to deal with the plumbing and the this and the that and the roof and everything else. Why weren't those things done?
Good question. They're both pointing the fingers at each other, right? VS Rich is the property management company. ERA is the owner who's actually responsible.
Uh-huh.
They did used to have somebody that would go look at the properties a long time ago, and they just stopped that practice. VS Rich is known to not be a very good property management company.
Okay.
But she, Vicky Rich was telling some of them that they shouldn't mention some of the problems or they would get a rent hike. So it was sort of ERA is going to raise your rent, so maybe just don't say anything. So that was, people can't afford a rent hike, then they're not going to say anything. And that's just the sad part of not having housing as a human right in general, is that tenants are forced to live in unsafe conditions.
Right. Sheba, how long were you living in your home before you received the eviction notice?
Almost 3 years.
Okay.
Almost 3. And to kind of piggyback off what Leslie was saying, me being one of the tenants, a lot. Yeah, I didn't say a lot of things, although I didn't. My house doesn't need a whole lot of the other things done that other houses needed. Just the little things that I did need. I always felt like I don't want to say anything because I don't, it's that fear you just live in when you're a renter. Like you don't want to, push any buttons because you don't want to be homeless. Even though they said that I could stay, it's still just one of those things where you just kind of live in a constant fear because you just never know.
Because it was a beautiful location. And for those of you who don't live in this Triangle region of North Carolina, the Eno River area is very scenic. It's very beautiful. It's a hiking area. It's a fishing area. And as some of you may well know that North Carolina is a very pretty state. And that is a very beautiful area right in the midst of the city. So you're living in this beautiful area and you did not want to go to a more urban sprawl type of thing. It was like you had your garden, you had the trees, you had the river, I can understand.
And to be honest, and one of the biggest reasons too, it was affordable in the sense of how much space that I had. It was just more affordable than anywhere else. And, that I had looked at. And,
right.
Yeah.
So you really had a trifecta of a wonderful place to be and felt so lucky that you had managed to get there. As when I was reading this article, and I think I have the article that actually shows all of your
I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen. I think I have it. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. You guys see it? Do you see it? Leslie?
Yes, I see it. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the article, and this is 4 of Sheba's daughters. So you guys organized this thing, and you have done well. And I got to give props to Lena Geller with the Indie Week for the wonderful article and information on that. And Sheba, you're in a brick home?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Let me tell you, I'm jealous. I'm jealous because I'm gonna tell you that's the dream house, to have a brick home. So, anyways, so Leslie, Apple will be here soon in the Triangle, and they're building, what is it, 200-acre campus?
281, yeah.
281. Oh my, it's almost 300 acres. Campus rents are going up. and they're literally through the roof. And what would you say to any politician locally here of what can they, is it too late to do anything to stem the tide of what's happening in the marketplace for people who are essential workers and low wealth people to live here? What would you what were some of the ideas would you have for them?
Well, it's never too late. We always have to fight. I mean, people have been pushed out from the beginning in this country. You know, it's all stolen land, and folks in Durham who built this city are the ones being pushed out. You know, their ancestors built this city. And Sheba, I do think it's important to say Sheba's likely your family's from likely slavery time. You have 5 generations of records back. And Sheba is the only one in her family that will have housing stability. And you have a huge family here.
A huge family.
You're the only one with housing stability?
Yeah, the only one with housing stability that's here. Everybody else that have made, gotten a house, they've had to leave. They've had to go to neighboring cities. So I'll be the only one here with
Durham.
housing stability.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. And you have a big family, you say?
A big family. Yeah. Wow. I have my nephew living with me right now because my sister's house caught on fire. So my sister is actually displaced right now. So my nephews are staying with me. And so like we need this stability, to be able to help our family members out in their time of need. And, without this, it will be, my nephews wouldn't have anywhere to go,
I see. Yes. Wow. Yeah. Wow. So and what else were you going to suggest, Leslie, as far as, I know the fighter would have you, but what about rent controls? What about some of those tools? That only place I know where I've heard of rent controls was in the state of New York. I've not heard of it anyplace else.
Yeah, New York does have the best rent control still. There are plenty of cities with it. However, 37, I think, states ban it at the state level. It's called preemption. So the state preempts it. The state bans it, so the local level can't enforce it. And that is, they preempt, minimum wage hikes, so labor rights, housing rights, trans queer rights, all sorts of rights. So it's just, we have to fight at every level. There are some things that we can do locally. We do need to preserve all public land. All city-owned land should not be given to private development. It should be, because you can have rent control. You can make sure that's a truly affordable housing, and you can have rent control on city-owned land. So that would be like step one: save all the public land that currently exists, and try to, make sure that the residents here have a say. Like the tenants and unhoused people need the biggest say.
Right.
They need to be leading the conversation,
right.
Not an afterthought of, what's possible under private development. It's no, what do we need? That needs to be the conversation. What housing do we need? Not maybe in decades it will trickle down. Like that's just not trickle down housing, just like trickle down economics in general is not work. And we don't have a low vacancy rate here. It's like 8% or something. 4% and under is considered low vacancy. And even their city, San Francisco, has, I don't know, a huge, like 15% vacancy. And the rents aren't going down, right? They might go down a little bit at the top when you have a huge supply, but we need to build and provide housing to fit the need, not the highest wage.
Right.
And with Apple coming in,
yes,
the average is actually $187,000 average for their worker salary.
I thought I was a little low. I said I thought it was 150,000. The average, check this out, guys. The average Apple salary for the new East Campus in North Carolina will be 187,000. If that's the average, imagine what's on the high end.
Yeah. And that's, they're looking at Durham RTP, Research Triangle area being the biggest East Coast hub for them. But again, I was ousted from the Bay Area.
Wow, banana plan at Canal Panama. Wow.
Excuse me, my Siri decided to interject into the thing. I don't know. What's she doing? I don't know.
But we do know that developers build to the highest wage. Mm-hmm. They don't build to like what could everyone afford. It's what's the highest number they could get.
Right.
And that's how they do projects. And that's the opposite of what we need.
Right.
So I think with preemption, we have to really start strategizing now how to overcome it. Federal level action. Could there be an executive order to not allow preemption in any state that impacts people's health, people's lives?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a lawyer, but there was a big push for Biden to implement some tenant protections, and he published a press release and a roadmap, like nothing binding. Mm-hmm. He gave us absolutely nothing. So there are a lot of possibilities. I think we have to unite with labor. Mm-hmm. We have to unite with environmental justice, climate justice, because they are all of these movements are related, right? Like what we do, indigenous saying what we do to the land, we do to ourselves, and vice versa. Like we need the people that are rooted in community to be able to stay there, because community is our first responders.
Right.
It's our safety.
Yes, right? It is.
And if we don't have that, which that's what they've taken that's what displacement does. It takes away those ties, that is your health, it's your mental health. It's your idea of belonging. When people don't have that, their lifespan shortens.
That's true. That's very true. Loretta Thomas Walker asked, can't the Fair Housing Act be applied to Sheba's family situation? I guess to her situation before she was being evicted, because they won. And I'm going to have Leslie describe better how that land trust situation, how they won it. But Leslie, can you answer that question?
Yeah, there is a move to affirmatively further fair housing and to try to have more enforcement. There is a lack of enforcement. We know it is super racist. The housing system is super racist and classist. And unfortunately, class is not a protected class, right? The discrimination is race. I do think they include gender, religion. It's several things. It just class is not one of them, because it would undermine the entire system.
Right.
Capitalism does need class repression. That's how it functions. It exploits people. So the Fair Housing Act, there are people that are looking to sue states that are only building market rate housing, because who can afford that, right? It's inequality is, you can see the breakdown on race, and so you should be able to make that tie, right? So yeah, I think we should look at overcoming preemption by using the fair housing mandates and what they're trying to improve enforcement of it right now. So it's a good opportunity to do that.
So what that tells me is that we are on top of everything else. That's what I love about having people on, is that it triggers the mind of another thing that we need to be telling our legislators what it is that we want them to do. And I think too often we forget that we drive that force of how we elect them. They work for us, so they need to be introducing bills and legislation to make these types of things happen, to reinforce them. Um, I think I know who this lady is, but I don't know how to pronounce that name she's got up here. But with average salaries like that, there will be a lot of migration. I definitely fear the domino effect. I just retired, but for that range. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money. You're going to make on average 187,000. I mean, where are they? I mean, what is that? You know, that is insane. That's a lot on average.
That's literally like less than a quarter of what the average person, like the average teacher,
Yes,
is making, the average sanitation worker,
please. Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, we're going to be pushed out unless we on the ground level, us on the ground, organizing, like shouting to the top of our lungs our needs, and being a collective and getting together, and with, like Leslie said, all of these other organizers, and yeah, getting together and saying, like, this is just not gonna go, this is not gonna fly. We belong here, we are important, and we deserve housing security.
That's right. That's right. And because I tell you what, since the pandemic, a lot of people are saying things like, gosh, people just don't want to work anymore. Where are they? And all of this. But one of the things that people forgot is that anytime you lose millions of people who are of the age to do jobs, to do work, most of them were essential workers. It takes a long time to recreate adults. They're gone. They're not coming back. I think a lot of people, when you really think about it strategically, I think a lot of us thought, oh, well, as soon as we come back to normal, everybody will be back. A whole lot of those people died, and a whole lot of those people are impaired because of long COVID or whatever. So we lost so many people. I forget what the number was in North Carolina, but look at New York. Remember, that was ground zero. They were digging mass graves. Did you guys see that? So when you lose that many people, you don't have that many people to replace folks. And so now with this type of economy, I don't know of any housekeepers or cleaning crews that are going to make 187,000 to clean up the Apple campus or even do the landscaping of it, right? I don't know. I don't know. Dawn Daly Mack is I know who she is. She is the president of the NAACP in a rural county here in North Carolina. And she's saying it doesn't appear that they know that they work for us, meaning our state legislatures and what have you. So what are the next steps, guys, that now that you won this land trust situation, what are some of your next steps? But wait, before you even answer that question, Leslie, explain to everyone what it is that you guys were triumphant over this land trust agreement that you guys have. Explain what that is.
Yeah, it's still in process. We thought it would be done by now. There's been some shenanigans. I can't talk about all of them right now, but it is on the path to winning the keys. They've won the cancellation of rent for a year now. We've been in this fight for a year almost. So that alone is profound. I've been doing this work for 10 years, tenant rights for almost 10 years, and I've never seen it. We've won rent reductions. We've stopped evictions. I've never seen the cancellation of rent for a year. So go ERTA. Yeah, so we pushed them because they're a land trust. We were like, well, then make it land trust housing. Land trust. They are already a land trust land. That means it can never be sold for market rate. It's protected in trust forever. And so land trust housing, the land itself is held in a land trust. The house on top of the land can be, is owned by an owner, but that owner is bound to the land lease. And within that land lease, you can write all sorts of things, meaning and usually it's used with the land lease mandates that it can only be sold to a low-income resident in perpetuity. So that means it's permanently affordable, can never be sold. It takes what we call the speculative value, the high profit and inflated value out of the picture, which means that's what we need for all housing.
Right.
And so, so we pressured them to adopt that model for housing. They've never done that before, but they could have if they wanted to. So they didn't want to take on the project themselves, and we've had to work to find a housing nonprofit that did know how to do that. You can't disclose that information until everything's signed.
Right.
It's silly, but that's whatever.
There it is. Yeah.
But that is in the works, and that means once they do sign it over, then the tenants will start being set up as homeowners on what's called a shared equity land trust housing model. And that means the money that you put in, that you pay on your very affordable mortgage, you can get back plus limited equity. So you'll get what you're paying in back plus a small percentage, not market rate where your house is double or triple or whatever you bought it for. But you're getting your money and then some back, so that you could, if and when you need to move, you can move, but you can also just pass it to your family. It can be in your family forever. So I really think we need to build out land trusts across the city and everywhere, because taking out the profit motive is what we have to do to save each other.
Right. And see, the whole thing is that, and that's essentially, I'm from Detroit, so I'm down with the UAW. And the whole thing is, listen, make your money, CEO, but don't make quadruple stupid money off of my back and then tell me I can't get a raise. I can't keep up with the pace of inflation. I can't have health benefits. I can't have all of these things that you're ensuring that you get and the rest of us don't. And we can, if we take care of each other, we'll all be good, right? It doesn't mean that we're not begrudging you guys for you making XYZ amount of money, but don't choke us where we can't live in decent housing, safe housing, because you want to house us all together, and not, we should be able to live well, for everybody. Let's see. Francis Wilson says, what about affordable housing for seniors? Should they be included in the AMI charts due to the fixed income basis? Francis, I know Francis, aren't you in Kentucky or Kansas? The state of Kansas or Kentucky or whatever. I know that here in North Carolina, at least in Durham, we do have AMI charts for housing, what have you. And I think I know they have it for federal housing too, but there's issues with our housing department, overall, I think.
I think what she's asking is that AMI is area median income. Should we include fixed income people in that? I mean, they're factored in, but AMI, what is considered affordable to what the area median income is, leaves out tons of people.
Right. It does.
Can't even afford the quote affordable housing. And that's why I think we have to let the poorest communities define what's affordable. It should be, I I just don't, housing shouldn't be a commodity. That is my stance. It should be a human need. And that's why we're in this.
Well, it's a human right. It's just like healthcare, housing and healthcare. We also know that when children are unstable or destabilized with their housing and what have you, you're going to have a ton of problems in school, right? We know that. So that's one of the big reasons why we need to make sure that, oh, we've got a bunch of more questions here. Thanks, Shauna, for saying your full name. What can I do to help after we are done with the podcast? I have already written our congressman about other issues, and all they do is respond with canned responses. She wants to know what to do. Shauna wants to know.
I don't know where you live, Shauna, but
I don't know who Shauna is either.
We have to, I mean, in general, people have to get to know your neighbors. Again, it's a hard thing with displacement. The first neighborhood I lived in here, it turned over. We lost like 6 neighbors in 1 year because the landlords doubled their rent.
Wow.
So, it's hard to organize when they're displacing whole communities at once.
Right.
So I do think trying to tenant unions are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We need not just LA Tenant Union has this great way of looking at what a tenant is, and it's anyone who doesn't have control of their housing is how they say it, which means unhoused tenants, housed tenants, and what they call bank tenants, which is low-income homeowners, right? And we have to unite and fight together for our right to housing. So, where did she say she was?
Francis Wilson that asked the senior question. Francis is in Kansas, and Shauna is in Georgia.
Okay, yeah, Georgia has a ban on rent control too. Yeah, we just have to organize at every level. I think in the country, KC tenants, Kansas City tenants in Missouri are doing hands down the best organizing. They organized almost 10,000 tenants across the city, and since 2019, that's a short period of time.
Oh, yeah, Francis. Yeah, okay.
Mobilize that many people. So we need to build out a big tenant movement that's tied to labor. It's tied to gender and sexuality justice, racial justice. They're not they shouldn't be siloed, because we all need safety, we all need housing, we all need healthcare, right?
We do. So. We absolutely do. Well, speaking of which, Miss Organizer Extraordinaire Leslie St. Dre, this might be your moment. Isn't that right, Shiva? Maybe would you nominate Leslie as our fearless leader in the country to get us together?
Oh God!
It sounds scary, but you know what? You've done the darn thing. When I learned of you from my daughter. And she said, yeah, Mom, I thought she was a lawyer, but she's not even a lawyer. And I said, oh, I have got to talk to her because this housing thing drives me bananas. It really does. And I will tell you, I have some friends that work for local government. And they said, oh, we're building this new facility and a certain percentage of it is for low income, but it is for low-income people for a certain period of time. Yeah. So what good is that? Does that mean that, oh, wow, the low-income people disappear? You see what I'm saying? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would we make agreements as government entities to people to build stuff, and it doesn't take care of us for the long term? I don't understand that. Do you understand that, Sheba?
I'm sorry, I I didn't get a chance to hear your.
Do you understand that if you're building something and you only have a limited time for when it can be have low income people in it, it it's as if the low income people just massively they miraculously disappear, and people, that doesn't happen. I've never known
that does not make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need organizers need to ask people like Sheba what they need and what will keep them involved, what will make them experience joy. Because we have, our movements cannot just be like, we have to bring in, it's all about relationships, right? Like how we relate to each other. We have to have fun in the fight, right? We have to feel connected. We have to feel a sense of belonging in our social
to be able to lean on each other and affirm each other, because we're going to need each other along the way in a lot of different ways. And Leslie and I have definitely leaned on one another to get through this fight.
I heard there was another question I had for you, Leslie, was there any time in this fight to get where you guys were, did you just feel like giving up? And then were you like the coach to keep everybody up? How did that work? Because you had a group of people that, was a group of you guys that worked together to make this happen.
I mean, I never got to giving up. We won so much so quickly almost that we all felt like getting everything we demanded was actually totally possible. And again, this won't work for your typical landlord. I tried to talk to ERA about being a spokesperson to try to convince other local landlords at least to do the right thing and stop displacing people. But they didn't take that opportunity, unfortunately, because we've had to push them. We still have to push them.
I'm almost wondering, with your Eno River Tenants Association, I'm wondering, Leslie, would another organization have to be founded independently with some grant funds and things like that, so that you can build this groundswell base, make things happen here locally, and then have an education component? Look at me giving you all this work. Have an education component that would help teach other groups statewide, because we could do that virtually, and that's not just, and then statewide and then countrywide, that it spreads. That's something like, that there's a base model set up, and then people can duplicate it or something to just to save ourselves, really, right?
Yeah, there are a handful of tenant unions in different cities here. There's not a lot, maybe 5 or 6 in the whole state. There used to be Bull City Tenants United. It started in 2019 and sort of fell apart. There is a good article about that if you just Google search the group. They did write on what happened. They did just put out an article last month. What happened? Why did we fall apart? Right? They were all volunteer. There are many groups that are all volunteer, but in a rapidly gentrifying city, which Durham is.
Yes,
I think top 3 or 4 in the nation, fastest gentrifying.
Oh my God! And with Google here, Meta here, and Apple coming, I don't want us to be like San Francisco. I don't think that's cool at all. It is not.
So there are, we do hope when we finally win, right, we get the paper signed and everyone gets the keys to the home, that we will throw a block party that's kind of like a popular assembly, and try to build off the momentum here. We've talked about that. And I'm trying to talk to people in the city that are community orgs, people that are interested in the topic of housing. Again, I'm really new here, so I'm just trying to learn, like, who's even doing community stability work,
Uh-huh.
I just got connected to Action NC in Charlotte, so they're not completely statewide, but they are with a few cities are trying to help train some people too. So it's happening. It's just it's not enough. There does need to be some base level support to sustain people, because it's actually just not sustainable in it where people need to make decent wages and aren't to do everything all volunteer all the time. There has to be a few people to keep it, administer it and help facilitate it.
That's my thing. I wasn't talking about you setting up some volunteer thing. I'm saying that it's something that is funded where people actually get paid to do, because that is hard work. It is hard work. And so you need to be paid for your work so that you don't lose it, because that's why it all fell apart, because it was a group of volunteers. That's the first thing, because when you are a volunteer and you're working on top, that volunteer job is a job, and you have work to just sustain your everyday self. It's hard to do it. It's just like Sheba's like church. It's like there's a few people that do all the stuff, and the rest of the congregation benefits from it, and that's not sustainable. So it's sort of like, where's the grant funding? Where is the funding period to make something like this happen?
Yeah,
And
I think they definitely were clear. It wasn't only about money, is why they dissolved for now anyway. There were other hard things, and organizing is hard, right? You have to navigate conflict, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Very time consuming.
And honestly, I mean, most of KC tenants, they have a few staff member, but a lot of even in the Bay Area, where they have a very old tenant movement, like a lot of people are volunteer. That's just, tenant organizing is mutual aid work, and I do think sometimes the nonprofit model can break things down, right? Because it can replicate the capitalist model, the corporate model. So I think we have to shift the structures of organizing to be more cooperative in general. But again, I think talking to tenants like Sheba, like if you want to share what would keep you and your family, what would even bring in your kids? Because we need youth. We need youth in this fight already, right?
Mm-hmm. To keep us, to sustain it.
But it's their future, right? It's their
right. I think just like for me, and I think like if I were to ask my daughters these questions and the questions that I have asked them, to definitely feel connected, like to feel connected with people, for like everybody, it's like everything is so individualistic, and so like to come together. I think that's one of the things that really kept me in this fight, was feeling connected to my neighbors and the wider community. This community really came together for us, and that boosted my confidence. That gave me just a step in the right direction. To whereas if I didn't feel like I had the community and people to lean on, I would have gotten tired out. I would have wanted to give up. So the education piece, like Leslie taught me so much. I think for especially for people of color, not knowing some of the down to the lingo and the language, you feel super insecure. We have to fight, but not the language or the education behind this fight, and then learning that you don't necessarily even need that. You just coming to the fight is the first step, and talking about what it is that you need, and just having your community come together with you. That's like that's so much strength in itself. Yeah, I think for me, like my daughters seeing me in this fight and seeing how many people, like I let them read the petition and how many people came to our aid, and their smiles and like boost of confidence, like wow, because sometimes you really feel secluded.
Right.
So yeah, I like knocking those doors felt so intimate,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I think that's what we need. The first step is just like being on the ground level, saying, I'm here for you. Let's do this together. What is it that you need? How can we make this happen?
Mhm.
Because when you start looking outward, it becomes like overwhelming.
Yeah.
It becomes really overwhelming when you start looking at it from the political standpoint and all that. Like but when you start here, it feels more doable.
Right, right. Frances Wilson again that asked the question about the seniors and the AMI and all of that type of thing. She is located in Kansas, and she says, "Well, how does she start about affordable housing, or whatever? Where would you suggest she would go within her local government? Would you go to the housing authority? Would you go to social services?
Where in Kansas?
I don't know." Francis, put in the chat where in Kansas you are. Okay, she hasn't done it just yet. Muna Mujahid says Don Maxwell did great work in Kansas City many years ago. She's just mentioning a name. Shauna says yes, but people tend to push through a little more when there's money involved. Good point. And that's what I was talking about. It's sort of like you got to have an executive director. Somebody's got to be paid to stick with it, because if everybody's a volunteer, I know what you're saying about the whole thing, but it's just you gotta.
Well, there are good models. There are new models that people are making that merge co-op and nonprofit. They're called worker self-directed nonprofit, where people are bringing their expertise and their experience, and it's not top down. We're learning. You learn from each other, because I've done housing a long time, but I've learned so much from Sheba and her fight and her roots here, like what it means to stay here. And this fight wouldn't be anything without you, Sheba. Like you can't win without the tenants that are rooted, like those most impacted. You can't win if they are not ready to share you have to make it safe to share their story. Not everyone will.
Yeah.
But like every campaign needs that. We needed Sheba to be sharing how this impacted her, how it impacted her family for generations, how it impacts future generations. Like that, it says everything. And and that's what people relate to, right? Like people are relating to that story because they've lived it here. It's historic Black city. It's rapidly whitening, and so people are looking at Sheba as what you've done and what you've shared, and hopefully some of them will feel the courage to fight. But you need a community behind you, because there is landlord retaliation. Like it's.
That's the other thing. I was thinking about that. Kansas City. So where would she start? In my mind, I was thinking
Kansas City, Missouri, right? Or is there a Kansas City, Kansas?
Her question is about. Let me see.
Kansas City, Missouri is a huge.
There is a Kansas
everything.
But, yeah.
Question about the tenant union.
Oh yeah, Kansas City has an amazing. Kansas City, Missouri has an incredible tenant union. I can find them. KC Tenants is what they're called. KC Tenants.
If you're in Kansas City, Missouri, Leslie knows about a tenant union there, but I don't know.
Yeah, kctenants.org. kctenants.org. They're amazing.
kctenants.org. I'm going to put it in the chat. kctenants.org. They are across the river from us. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually helping train other people in the state, though. So, and they're connecting with the Homes Guarantee campaign is a nationwide campaign that's trying to help spread education about how to form a tenants union and how to do this fight too. Okay. The Worker Self-Directed Nonprofit. It was formed by a group called Sustainable Economies Law Center. They work that way. They develop the model. They share how to do that model. It's co-op.
She's talking to you, Shauna.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I was the first community organizer for the Durham Community Land Trustees. I remember that, Mamoon. I remember that. Shauna says thank you. Let's see. I think Don Maxwell is from Kansas City, Missouri. Francis, Don Maxwell from Kansas City, Missouri. Moon is saying that she knew that he did great work in Kansas City many years ago. I don't know. He might still be there. I don't know. Okay. Wow. Whew, okay. Well, everybody had somebody text me saying that they were trying to get on, but they were busy doing something else. But what you guys have told us about this is so, this is what do you call it? This is so important, and yet it's sort of like people know it's important, but they don't know where to go. You know what I mean? And even like when we first talked, Leslie, you were using a lot of acronyms, and you taught me that there were huge real estate lobbyists rather. And I was like, for real? I didn't know. And we don't know what we don't know until we really don't know it. And you get into the thick of things and you realize, okay, if you've got lobbyists on real estate greasing Congress people's hands and stuff, then this is why we don't have certain laws in place to protect us, we the people, right?
Yeah, they are the biggest lobbyists in the country under the Chamber of Commerce, which represents most multiple industries. So the biggest singular lobbyist for an industry in the entire country at every level.
Amazing. I couldn't, when you told me that, I was like, oh, really? I couldn't believe it. I can't think of who I thought was the biggest lobby. I thought maybe pharmaceuticals or something. I don't know.
Tech used to be pharma and tech used to be way up there, but they are surpassed them. I do think when you asked about solutions, I do think if every state has ethics guidelines, and you're not supposed to profit from legislation you're passing. And so we did use that guideline to stop the worst anti-tenant bill here in the state, HB 551. The authors were a pet screening CEO who would have profited off making people jump through hoops to try to have support animals and charge them. He would have made money, personally profited, and the other guy was a realtor, also would have made money from the anti-tenant bill. So I think if we can get legally creative and try to figure out how to retroactively do it, if we can look at who made money off real estate, they shouldn't be voting for any of our laws, and they are. Right? They should not be voting on anything that has to do with tenant rights or advancing the real estate industry. And that is a large portion of our representatives across the country.
Wow. Are you sure you're not a lawyer, Leslie?
I know.
Because the first line in your bio is that you're an artist, but you're an artist with all this legal legal skills and stuff. So
We're gonna get creative with our policy fights too.
that's awesome. Shauna says, I'm working on a nonprofit for homeless to high tech. I have a passion for the topic, still trying to learn. Right. Luna Mujahid says, she's speaking again about this Don Maxwell person. He helped residents organize tenants to take back their neighborhood. He did economic development and built senior housing. Francis Wilson, are you familiar with this Don Maxwell person that Muna is talking about, it from Kansas City, Missouri? Okay. All right. But at any rate, boy, it's a lot. And an hour goes by so fast. But I appreciate you guys so much. Francis says, thank you, ladies. And I learned a whole lot. Listen, guys, if you're on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up button. It helps the algorithm. It helps my channel. And please consider subscribing and hit the like button wherever you go and subscribe, please. Have to put that PSA out there. I thank you, Sheba, for coming on the show. Oh, her
Connection.
Leslie, thank you so much. I hope to meet you real soon.
Oh yes, I'd love to meet you.
I'd love to meet you real soon, because for somebody who just came to the Triangle, you have done a whole lot. You have done a whole lot.
I mean, we all benefit. I do think, homeowners benefit too from stabilized neighborhoods.
Oh, absolutely.
And they have to get into the fight too.
Yes.
Everyone deserves the same stability.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. And thank you, Sheba. Sheba's internet clicked out on her. I'm glad we made it through the show, though. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care. Let's wave everybody off. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.